Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. I hit record. I did it. I hit the button.
Awesome.
We're here, man. Man, I'm so excited. Everyone, we've got great backgrounds on. We've got coffee. We've got water. Amazing guest today. Let me tell you about him. Let me kind of inspire you with who we're talking with today. He's a senior marketing leader, a speaker, and a growth evangelist. How long? Is this a year, 2 years? No. Decades. At least 2 decades of experience. Lots of work in the financial services and the technology spaces. A lot of big brands. But one of the things I really liked about his description in my conversation so far is that not only does he like to build teams, but he likes to inspire them as well, which we're going to get into as we go through. Big brands, Discover, Twitter, Financial Engines, GoDaddy. Currently the Vice President of Marketing at First Republic Bank. Yogesh Mehra, welcome, sir.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here, Casey. I don't think I have introduced myself that well. I may borrow some of those as a way of introducing myself. Appreciate the kind word. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm super excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? Sometimes what people do is they clip that part off the show and they make it their wake up alarm on their cell phone every day, you know? Ladies and gentlemen, you know?
Hey, that may work. I have trouble getting out of bed. So
Maybe
that
this will
sounds,
do it.
yeah.
Though, you know what? Sometimes when you hear someone's voice, or sometimes I'd put a song for a wake up alarm, you start to hate that song, you know? You're like, so maybe you wouldn't like to hear my voice after a 4 or 5, 5 a.m. wake up. So, but hey, let's get into this. The theme today, it's our marketing leadership series. And we're talking about data, talking about balancing the tactical, the strategic, and actually executing so many things here. So I want to get right to it. I'm going to pass you something here. It's kind of heavy. So hold on a second. Okay, here you go. You got it? Here's the handle.
I got it. Yeah.
Thor's hammer. All right. Look at that.
Got it.
One-handed Thor's hammer, people. The strength of giants over here. So take Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Just set the record straight once and for all.
There are quite a few of them. I'm on a bit of a myth busting trip for the last few months. Let me talk about the one that I think is especially rampant,
Okay.
and that is data being the end all be all. I believe data only takes us so far, and over reliance on the data could be problematic. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First one being the fact that data causes what I call a tunnel vision.
Oh, yeah. Like
right?
If you're driving, you got the blinders and just looking at one. Yeah.
You got it. You are focusing on too much on conversion rates, click-through rates, cross-sell revenue per product, etc., right? And you may kind of lose a bigger picture. Who is the customer? Are we on brand? Does it make sense in the long term? Are we getting the right kind of people, etc., right?
Right.
The second is there is a big confirmation bias in data, right?
Okay.
People use data, cherry pick data, sometimes even have the problem statements that get the data that kind of fits the numbers to the narrative. Right?
Got it. So instead of learning from the data, they're just using it to say, I'm right.
Exactly. There you go.
Is that technically what confirmation bias is? Is just trying to twist data to your own evil purposes?
Exactly. Or something, if something does not fit your belief, you kind of rig it, hack it to confirm it to your own narrative, your own mental model. Yeah, so you're right. And then the final thing I would say is an over-reliance on data, honestly, stifles creativity and innovation. And if you, I don't know if you have, if you hear Jeff Bezos talk about Amazon Prime, he talks about the fact that every spreadsheet that he saw on the profitability was bleeding red. If they would have made the decision of launching Amazon Prime on profitability, it would never happen,
Right.
right?
Right.
So sometimes, you have to innovate and do the right thing for the customer, and know that if you do the right thing, everything will work out,
Mm.
right? And those are not always data driven decisions. So I think data is one of the very critical inputs, but then you have to layer judgment, intuition, and a little bit of heart,
Yeah.
to arrive at the right point, or the right decision, I guess.
A little heart, the fuzzy side, the non, non-measurable feelings.
There you go.
Yeah. Tell me about Prime, right? Maybe just chat about it. So if it looks like red on paper, but we now know that it basically shifted all of society to now we can't stand to not get something in 2 days
Right.
or 4 days during COVID, and we're totally used to it. Nobody wants to pay for shipping anymore.
That's right.
It's sort of changed everything. And if you're not on Prime, you're behind, or you're in a log cabin somewhere. I mean, everyone's got Prime. It's so worth it. I remember when I first was like, should I get it or not? It
Right.
was sort of early in that, and I was like, oh, well, do the math. Am I going to really buy that much on Amazon? Not
Right.
yet, not really. But then slow over time, it was a no-brainer. And my
Right.
company has it. I have it, and we use it all the time. Of course, now everyone uses it all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There were definitely some early adopters, and that really helped.
Mm-hmm. But like, what is it? Just your drive, the heart that then says, I mean, how do you avoid falling into that if everyone's telling you this is going to put you in the red? I mean, aren't you crazy for not listening? You know?
I, yeah, no, I think it does need a certain degree of conviction,
Yeah. Okay.
and I think you got to warm up the room when there are a lot of opposing voices. And what really helps is, definitely as a leader who's managing the change and getting people to do, different things, look at things
Yeah.
a different way. I think a couple of things that would sort of work in that environment is, you can never go wrong by taking the view of the customer, right?
Mm.
So if you take the view of the customer, if you talk about, here is what has happened in parallel industries, and there are some similarities between why it worked there, it might work here as well. Um, I think having a storyline around those themes.
Yeah.
The other thing that has worked for me is what I called, in these cases, I'm looking at the right uh, phrase, loss aversion. That's the
Loss
word I was
aversion.
looking for, right?
Yeah.
And what that means is that sometimes people are just not comfortable stepping out of the comfort zone. We are doing things because that's the way it's been done, right?
Yeah.
So position your idea as a pilot, just a small test, just a tiny experiment, just a pilot. Well, what do you have to lose, right?
Just a
And that,
pilot. Yeah.
right, and then that kind of people coalesce around. You know what? Yeah, let's just
We're
see
not
how this
changing
goes.
everything. We're just doing a little test here, guys. We're not. Don't worry. Not everyone's gonna do this free shipping thing. Let's just do a little POC here. Let's just see what happens.
Exactly. Now
Yeah.
that's not. I don't know if that's what Jeff did.
I don't know either. Yeah. That's what I might do though.
But exactly, that may work for you and me.
Right. Right. And now they're our post office.
That's exactly right.
It's amazing. I think I've gotten like 8 things yesterday. We just ordered a bunch of school supplies, and here they come. Here they arrive.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sold. I'm sold on that. The fact that you've mentioned, some very powerful things. The fact that it's problematic. You get the tunnel vision, you have the confirmation bias, and you're stifling innovation. There's all these terrible things that come from data. But at the same
Right.
time, if you don't have the right data, if you have dirty data, then you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. You'll never get off the ground. How do
Right.
you find a happy middle? How do you figure out where you're giving a healthy dose to making sure data is important, but it's not like you're worshiping it?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a science and an art,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
There is always that concept of marginal returns,
Okay. Yep.
And I think the more experience you get in your line of business, the more what does that 80/20 looks like, right? And then
Yeah.
anything more than 20% efforts is where the marginal returns start happening.
Hmm.
So let's I'm thinking on the fly here. Let me give an example.
Yeah.
In a marketing campaign, right? If you are taking a product to the market, and this stuff, Casey, how many personas do you think you can come up with from a positioning messaging standpoint?
Hundreds, thousands.
You got it.
You can come up with too
Right?
many.
How many do you start with to
Right.
make sense?
Maybe two or three, right? Just a couple.
There you go. And
Yeah.
that's the idea of marginal returns, right?
Okay.
You can boil the ocean all you want, but all
Right.
you need is to focus on the two things that matter, or the three
Yeah.
things that matter, right? um, so that's kind of how you find, hey,
Because those
what,
two or three are going to cover 80% of the people. Ideally.
exactly.
Yeah. And because it takes time to build personas. You got to do nurture campaigns and email campaigns and all the different branding and all that. So you don't have the time to your point, boil the ocean or the San Francisco Bay behind you on your graphic. Yeah, boil that thing. It's too big. But you can get some buckets full of other people, and you can boil those segments, those personas. Okay, so
Exactly.
I'm glad you went over that because I think it's one of those things where we forget that if we want to get the most bang for our buck, be efficient, and sometimes we get in the busy work mentality where we're just trying to be busy, and I think we get out of the 20%. We get into just doing the other things that don't really make as much of a difference, but we maybe feel like they are because we're busy.
Yeah. I'm gonna, if you don't mind, let's talk about busy for a second. I know
Yeah,
you are running
please.
this show, but like
No,
I think
yeah,
you
no.
hit this is not part of the script, but I think this is an important point
There is
point
no
that you make.
script.
Uh, so I think I don't remember who said this, which translates along the line of busy is the new stupid,
Busy is the new
right?
stupid.
Right. Um, Essentially, I think busy really takes us away from thinking on the things that matter,
Mm,
and really um, keeps us from really zooming out and seeing the big picture. So I think being less busy helps us focus on the things that matter, prioritize us the right things, and that I think makes a disproportionate impact on the business, on the people, on the strategy, etc. So I think you kind of hit on a very important pocket, sort of a point that I just
yeah.
wanted to unpack a little bit.
Yeah. No, and I mean, yeah, I'm devil's advocate though, right? Hard work gets things done though. So how do you what if busy is the new stupid, but hard work gets things done? How do those things, how do you resolve those two?
Yeah. But I think there's a bit of a gray area there.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
you have to work extremely hard at your craft and get better at it, and
Yeah.
improvement and self improvement and all that. At the same time, you have to do it and bark up the right tree and fish
Okay.
in a pond that matters, right? And that's the nuance. If you are too busy, and busy is translating in how I'm talking about it right now, to working on a plethora of things, and some of them may not even count.
Right.
So in that construct, working hard on the right kind of things
Mm,
matter. But working hard on a host of things that may not matter is dilution of focus. And in this construct, that's what I mean by busyness.
the dilution of focus. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You don't see things through to the end if you're so diluted that you've begun several projects or you've begun several lead sources or campaigns and you've never finished them because you only started them.
you got it.
Yeah. I love that. Fish in the right pond. There's no fish over here. What are you doing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think I've heard it said too that typically companies get most of their leads, most of their business from one or two or three sources, probably even two. The most come from those areas. Yet so many companies have 8 or 9 or 10 lead generation sources to try to get the leads in, but really they're only coming from a certain amount, certain ones. Maybe
Yeah,
they should be considering those other ones tests, not like, to your point, diluting all of their lead gen power, or even ABM side, all that power, and they're just getting all diluted. All that focus is then you're not able to focus on that, on the 20% where you get all the results from.
I think you're right,
Yeah.
and I think that's that kind of that principle cuts across all the industries and a lot of businesses.
Right.
And one of the things, I think you hit an important point. Um, and the problem with the 20 channels, as an example that you provided, is
Mm-hmm.
the amount of minimum work that you need to do to keep the engine humming in those channels or whatever those acquisition sources is the same a lot of time. The fixed cost in terms of effort of nurturing a channel that gives you 1,000 leads versus a channel that gives you 10 leads is not all that different.
True.
All
That's
the
true.
more reason to relentlessly kind of prioritize.
Right. Because if you're still sending out the same 10 emails or creating this or doing this and sending that,
Exactly.
unless maybe you have marketing automation helping you, but still, to your point with the personas, you're not going to go set up 8 or 9 or 10 or 30 different things when you really should be
Right.
focusing on the 2 or 3 personas that really drive most of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah. Um, what's the first step then? I mean, I think we've sort of philosophized about the right way to approach data. Is there a first step for someone? I mean, to approach data in a healthy way?
Yeah, I think so. Um, the way I think about the data is I think it's in a service of a business goal,
Ah, okay.
right?
That explains a
So,
lot. Yeah.
so even before I start thinking about data wrangling, data sources, cleansing, etc., like I ask myself, what does success look like? What am I trying to solve for? And I think a lot of clarity comes from asking that question. It's a simple question, but doesn't mean it's an easy question to answer.
True. True. Yeah.
What am I solving for? Is there am I trying to focus on the best way to resolve a pain point, market size, and what does success look like? What KPIs matter, right? And then accordingly, I can figure out what data makes sense. But that's kind of how I think about sort of the first step, as you said.
I mean, yeah, I'm putting that goal first, the purpose, the intent.
Yeah,
Um, the thought that came to mind when you're describing that is, how many times do we try to clean up some fields in our database where you're not even going to use those fields? You don't need the data. You don't need that particular column to be filled in. So
yeah.
why go and fill it in with whatever method necessary when you're not even going to use it? And if you'd taken a step back, like you're describing, to say, what does success look like? What am I solving for? What's the ideal outcome? At the end of this day, at the end of this project, what has to be true for this to be a success? This, and this. And here's some KPIs, like you described. Now okay, how do we make that happen? And that may require some data being cleaned, this data being fixed or changed, but that way at least you're moving in one direction.
There you go. I think that's a
Yeah,
great example that you provided. I also think, I know, I actually love your opinion on this one because you are the sort of the marketing automation. You have a lot of subject matter expertise there.
sure.
I
Yeah,
see a lot of that stuff happening too, right? Hey, let's do, this module in email, in marketing automation platform. Like not, do we really need it now? What is it going to do to me now?
totally.
Right? Or can it wait for the next 18 months? Like, I'd love to kind of pick your thoughts there too. Um,
Well, for sure. If it's one of those situations where you say, if I had $1 for every time someone asked me to help them set up multi-touch tracking ROI
yeah.
reporting across the journey. And then when I look, they haven't set up a journey. They don't have touches, right? And very simple,
Yeah.
they don't have touches. You get a person in and your sales team calls them and nothing else happens. There are no touches to track. So why are we setting this up? You don't need, it's not going to show you
Yeah,
anything. But it's like cart before the horse with all these things. Data is good, but what are you using it for? Same thing for sure happens in marketing automation,
yeah,
with different features. And sometimes it's because some features are more fun than others. And I also
true.
found that the vendors, the technology vendors and a lot of consultants aren't necessarily thinking strategic or even about the end goal in mind. I saw a blog post the other day. It bugs me. I bring it up all the time. A consultant said, here's the 5 most unused features in Pardot that you should try today. It's
Okay.
like, just because they're unused doesn't mean I should try them. Maybe I shouldn't try them. Maybe I don't need them. Why? But I'm just going to try these because they're unused. Like what do we do is the worst, it's like the worst example. And so, and then product teams usually will market and pitch, and even customer success teams will market and pitch just the, either the high dollar value features, or just just a feature. There's not really a
Yeah,
rhyme to a reason to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I can't agree more with you. I think it's especially, I think those examples are very relevant. And unfortunately, you know, they're relevant and they're rampant. And that's why
Right.
you need to ask those questions to kind of cut through
Right.
the noise. Yeah.
Right. I ended up creating a framework too. And from my situation, I made a roadmap for marketing automation of like step 1, step 2, steps 3, 4, and so on. So it's a roadmap, and it instructs, do this feature set first, then this, then this. And what's funny, to your point, when you actually do it that way, it turns into a snowball. It becomes easier and easier to do the other things because you've done the earlier things. Data's in there. It's not number one though. Number one is
Right.
actually getting the segmentation figured out. Who are the people you're trying to go after? And building those into Pardot to say, okay, well, here are the different fields we need to know this.
Yeah.
And then it comes time to, okay, now do we have the data that will help us fill that in? Let's make sure it's clean. And also let's set it up now to do reporting. But then that multi-touch thing, that's 10. That's like at the end,
Exactly.
you know? That's not now.
Exactly.
And I know everyone wants to do it, but there's things that are fun to do before you get there. And then that way,
Yeah.
when you go and you finally get to step 10, all you gotta do is flip a switch, and then you see all these amazing, beautiful charts. But if you try doing that now, people do that. And unfortunately, reps for different products will sell like, oh, flip a switch. They flip a switch, but there's no data. So it's like, blah, it just sits there. There's no charts. There's nothing. It's on, but
Exactly.
there's no data. So
Exactly. But
yeah,
it's a shiny object,
it is a shiny object. Yeah.
right? I think a lot of thinking is guided by um the new shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The you're looking for the new, the variety, things that just mix it up. I've heard like marketers are like cats, looking at a laser on a wall, you know, or dogs being distracted by, you're walking your dog, or like, come on. And then he sees like neighbors, and he's like,
yeah,
runs like, no, come on, like not even paying attention anymore. It's like, we're kind of distracted. It's the Marketech, chief Marketech, right? With his Marketech 5000, just showing the 5,000,
yeah,
more than that now, the just number of
yeah.
marketing apps that are out there. Number
It's
of
amazing.
categories, probably 20. I don't even know how many categories. There's a lot of categories.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah.
It's just amazing. Like that thing was, I think, in hundreds, right? Like 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. He said
And
first he was like 52 or something, and you could count it on his hand. But now it doesn't fit in the page anymore. They got to
yeah,
go to like 3 pixels per logo to fit it
that's,
all in.
I think exactly right. It's just amazing. I was looking at it the other day. If you kind of start bucketing into, use cases, like y- you just start spotting so much redundancies. You really need these 50 things
Right.
for this purpose?
Right.
Um, uh, so
Well,
it's fascinating.
yeah, the different purposes and the shiny, I think sometimes I've fallen into this trap. You look at it as like a band-aid, or like a golden bullet or something, where you just do it once and it'll solve all of your challenges.
Yeah,
And I've done this with a PPC. I was doing AdWords,
yeah,
100,000 a month. So you really wanted to refine it, save some money. And we bought, it was like clickable. This is many years ago.
yeah, yeah,
It had a great UI. It just looked friendly. It was like, ooh, nasty AdWords and their, Windows 95 look at the time. You're like, ooh, this is like an Excel spreadsheet hell, or this really beautiful user interface, and it had little suggestions. Ooh, maybe you're too high on this bid, or maybe you're too low. And you're like, yes, we need this thing. But when you go to try to use it, you're like, I don't know how to use it. You still need to know how to do AdWords to use it, right? So you had to hire someone who knew AdWords, and he came in and he taught us how to use it. But it it just it looked pretty, and it didn't solve anything for us. But it can help you if you know what you're doing. But I mean, how many times do we do that where we just go and we try to orchestrate a fix and buy something and then drop it in and then use a third of it, use a tiny portion.
That's exactly right. So many little things that we do. Like, yeah, it's funny. This is a basic example. Even Microsoft Excel.
Mm,
Feel like there are so many things there. If you just look at the
it's
functions,
true. Oh, the functions. Yeah.
so powerful.
Yeah. There's a search function on that because there's so many of them.
Exactly. And same with all the other tools that you're talking about.
And I mean, it's just me, but my particular, thankfully, I've used maybe 6 functions my entire life. VLOOKUP, addition, subtraction, something else, and
Exactly.
not much else.
Exactly. It's funny. It's a dichotomy, right? There's an overload, but sometimes the easier thing that you really need are not very discoverable. And not
Yeah.
just Excel, but in
Yeah.
general, in a lot of software as service or software as platform, etc., etc. Like if you look at some of the newer tools, like even with like the some of the paid advertising platform that you're talking about,
Yeah.
um, like go to the ads manager or the new search ads 360.
Mm.
It's just over engineered, so powerful. Um,
Well,
but
isn't the
all I need
joke?
is like
Yeah.
all I need is a couple of things, and it would be nice if I can easily find them rather than
Right.
customizing all my columns.
I think the perfect example is like it used to be the VCR remote, now the
Yeah,
television remote. And if you really think about it, I mean, the Apple TV remote is what you really need. You need to be able to move around, get out. You don't really need the microphone thing, but they threw it in there anyways. But like menu to escape out of a frozen app and volume up, volume down. Like that's all you don't need. But the over engineering of the remote control, the cable one that we have from the cable company,
yeah,
has 30 buttons. I do not
yeah,
use any of them. I go to source and get it on Apple TV and use my phone. It's
yeah.
interesting.
I think that's a good example to wrap your head around. I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Someone shared on LinkedIn the other day. Here's my Martech stack. What do you all think? Is there anything that I could replace or not use, or is there anything? I don't know if you saw this post. I think is the same. I don't know. This thing probably it went pretty viral, but I thought okay, but you hit the more button and it filled the screen, right? So I thought okay, 5 or 6 things. No, they had apps for everything, and one in each category. Maybe that it was good. 18 apps, and some of the comments were like, "Do you need all these things? There's a lot of overlap in this and this and this." Um,
crazy.
wow,
Yeah, I need to check that LinkedIn post. It'll be interesting to see that. So, did people also kind of point out sort of the sort of uh, what do you like? How many of them went to the solution as against kind of challenging why do you need it?
it's a great question. I'll have to find that post because some people are just suggesting more, and then
Yeah,
some people are like, nah. That looks heavy. It looks heavy because it is, like, to your point, not only with the campaigns, but every app you
yeah,
purchase, there's upkeep, there's use of it. And I think for sure we fall off the platform there. I think I've heard a stat that something like 30% of SaaS apps get used. It's kind of an average, industry average. Most people use only 30% of the capabilities of any given system they have
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
across the
I thought it
board.
was
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I thought it was even less than that.
was it? I imagine.
But but I think you're right. Like it's crazy, right?
Yeah,
You're
when we
you're
do.
spending 3 times more than what you actually need.
Yes. Exactly. And so many times with marketing automation, you see people using it like MailChimp. Sorry, MailChimp, you're cute and I use you sometimes, but like MailChimp, it can be free actually. There's a free version.
Yeah.
So, but you're investing in one of these serious tools that can do some really powerful stuff, but then you're using it like MailChimp. Like, what are you doing? Stop. Stop doing that.
It's
For
exactly
marketing
right.
automation, I found it's about 30% is the average utilization. That's at
Yeah.
least before they meet us. And then we get them
And then
into
you
more of
you
it.
you
But
get them on the right track.
yeah, get them on the right track. But beforehand, yeah, and what's interesting is some tools, not I love Pardot and this use tools whatever as long as you're using
Right.
them. But there's some other marketing automation tools that I won't name just to protect the innocent or the guilty.
Sure.
People's scores usually 0 on the assessment that we give them.
Yeah.
You know, they're not actually even using any of the features in their tool because
Yeah.
they're emailing out of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
Do
It's wild.
do do you how you see the industry playing out here? Do you see a lot of consolidation happening, or
Mhm.
is it? Yeah.
Yeah, that like the platform. I think I came up with this. Maybe I didn't. I mean, I said it, but I don't think I invented it. Something like the platform always wins. That's what I came up with. The platform always wins. So, talking to people who want to be partners with either us or Salesforce or whoever, it's like, well, there's who's your CRM, right? And there's different chat bots out there now. Who's your CRM? Who's your marketing automation platform? And I met someone the other day, had a pretty cool like a webinar app, and they had no affiliation. They hadn't declared love for anyone, but that doesn't work so well anymore, because what ends up happening is if you've declared, like, qualified is web chat for Salesforce and Pardot. So if you're on those tools, that thing just magically connects to everything you have. Drift has talked a lot about connecting to Pardot, but also really played up connecting to Marketo. So
Hmm.
they're kind of dating everybody, but they're also saying, like, let's be BFFs, Marketo. Totally cool. At least they're saying it.
Right.
And then qualified's like, no, we're with Salesforce, right? They're not writing to Dynamics and to Oracle and to other things. They're like, we're
Got
here.
it.
And then those apps then respond by saying, okay, if you're on our platform, you should check out these guys. So there's this sort of symbiotic relationship when you're part of the platform. So that I
Got it.
definitely see that happening, and like my team doesn't do a CRM outside of Salesforce. We do Salesforce, and that's okay. Specialization within the platform, and then it becomes these like walled countries where none shall pass, right? Like, so, but if you're doing a migration, we do a lot of migrations off of other platforms onto Pardot, and we have to know the other things to be able to
Yeah.
get them on there. But we don't like help you do the other ones. We just help you get on to the new platform. And so, yeah, I see very much that if you're not declaring your love for those things, then you miss out on the benefit of having a big brother or big sister.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to compete, because it came, case in point, when Salesforce bought Pardot, Marketo, Eloqua, have had years. Marketo is probably the front runner.
Yeah.
HubSpot would argue they are, but I would say the smaller companies, that's a different measurement. But in the higher realm, because Pardot was now Salesforce's tool for marketing automation, they promoted that like you would expect them to, and that quickly became a very popular tool.
Right.
And so anyone not in that conversation, like when Salesforce was looking at Steelbrick or Aptus, when they went Steelbrick for CPQ, that's the tool du jour if you've got Salesforce. And a lot of organizations have Salesforce. And Aptus knew it. I think they tweeted how mad they were, and they got banned from the App Exchange because of it, right? So it's like you need to
Yeah.
respect the boundaries here. It's almost like little countries.
It is. And if you think about it, that is, I think, such an inefficient model, right?
Is it?
If
Is it
you
inefficient?
inefficient model, if I'm the if I'm the end user,
Oh, interesting.
right? Because all I need is this modules, and I would like to go to one to maximum two vendors,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But but that but in this model, I may not be able to do that, because I may not be able to always get to the right answer with those two vendors.
True. True.
If
But
they
those two
had,
vendors might not be able to connect to each other.
there you go.
Yeah.
because of the walled gardens, or
Yeah.
the countries in your
Integration. You can only
example.
use Zapier for so much, like if they don't
Yeah,
have a direct API, or you're going to do your own. So you're right. You can't pick and choose. That's a good point. You can't pick and choose maybe the best platform. It's up to, did the parent company buy the best one? I hope they did. I was fortunate they bought Pardot because I think it's the best. But if they had bought Marketo, like, we wouldn't be here today. It would be a completely different conversation. I don't know what I would be doing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but totally different conversation. But I'm glad they bought that one. But you're right. Companies don't always buy. They just buy what they need to buy. Like when Marketo got scooped up and Pardot
yeah.
got scooped up, I remember, was it IBM? Someone scooped up Silverpop, which I think is the worst platform. This was maybe 8 years ago. Hopefully it's better. But at the time, I hate that platform, right? Somebody paid millions and billions of dollars for it. And I think it's like terrible, but like
Yeah,
they needed something
yeah.
to be able to
Uh,
compete.
yeah, I agree. I've worked with all the names that you just alluded to,
Yeah,
and I can have a different session on the frustrations. But a lot of my view aligns with what you just talked about.
sure.
Um, it's just what's very interesting is, despite how some of these are extremely frustrating, they have a long shelf life.
Hmm.
Man, silver pop has been used forever,
Yeah,
right? And
it
there are
has.
the some of my peers in different industries um, that still use it and are reasonably content, right? And
Yeah,
how does that happen? Right.
right.
I think there are several reasons for that. There are cost reasons. There is you only need so much in where you are in your business maturity and all that.
Sure.
But it's just amazing how you and us have a fairly advanced, sophisticated view
Hmm.
of tools and technology and how to use it to drive the business. Um, but that's not the case everywhere, and
Right.
which then there are a lot of platforms that are suboptimal that just still have a huge shelf life, or a big shelf life. It's amazing.
It is. It is. And what's interesting is I was fortunate enough to have used Pardot first, then Silverpop, so I was aware of the contrast. Um, and it was torture, but um, and I remember even helping them develop it better because as a user, like for example, you can set global scoring settings in Pardot. Every
Yeah,
time a form gets
that's right.
completed, increment the score. In Silverpop at the time, you couldn't do that. So you had to manually add every new form you created to a rule that said add 50 points. And if you forgot, it didn't go. And every different thing, you had to do all these manual things. And I was like, this is so easy to do over here and not over here. So I would complain about it. And they eventually added that in there. I'll take full credit for it. I don't know if it's me, but like these
Yeah,
things are
yeah.
developing, thankfully, to maybe some customer feedback. But it's almost like there's different products that innovate. They take a next step, and some companies are able to sort of like get onto that. Other companies are. I mean, I can't imagine a company still being on Silverpop, but there, to your point, there's such a long shelf life. Maybe it's a long-term leadership at that group, because oftentimes when leaders change, tools change. So maybe they just such a stable environment that they don't want to stir
That's
anything
exactly right.
around. Yeah,
I think change management and switching costs, like these are not easy decisions to make if you
yeah,
think about the repercussions. Yeah, but that makes you you have definitely a role as a consultant.
yeah.
You can help the businesses navigate a lot of those decisions.
For sure, for sure. But oftentimes it's even the ecosystem that helps them now make that decision, right? So
Yeah,
to your point, you have less choice. It's interesting. It's almost like maybe it's when an industry is, I don't say the very beginning like Eloqua and Marketo, but coming in, maybe whatever part of the curve it's on with with our life cycle. Maybe it's
yeah,
not early adopters, but it's somewhere in the middle. Then that's when, before all of the acquisitions start happening, it's almost like getting into its maturity stage. That's when you have the most freedom, because you have multiple platforms, and to compete, they all connect to everything. That's what happened. So
yeah,
for a while, Pardot connected to Salesforce and to NetSuite. When I first used it, I had NetSuite and connected to Sugar and a lot of things, so you could get it. But then eventually, that it's almost like the market reached its maturity, and then everyone started gobbling up the platforms, and then they started reducing the integration so you only could talk to the mothership. It's an interesting progression.
It definitely is.
Yeah. I wonder what's next. I wonder what the next one is. What are you seeing? Do you see anything coming around the bend, or any kind of strategies or technology that you're intrigued by, or maybe scared of?
I I, uh, I think the way I think about things progressing is, a lot of what we do will fall into sort of the relatively lower proficiency and
Mhm.
and the higher proficiency buckets, right?
Okay.
And the things that need relatively lower overall proficiency can be automated. They
Yeah.
will be taken care of by tools, technologies, algorithms, etc. Right? Um, so in that sense, I think there's a lot of data analytics, data visualization, reporting, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you are in marketing, it is a lot of the messaging delivery, um, data management platforms, etc., etc. I think a lot of that is going to be more rampant. Um, Human involvement will continue to decrease
Right.
on that front.
Does that, tying back to our earlier conversation, does that play into the myth that we were just trying to smash the data isn't everything, that now we have more and more data tools, or is this going to help the situation?
I think I'm not sure if this will help that particular problem. I think what will
Okay.
help that particular problem is just making sure that we design the ecosystem in a way that allows for layering the human judgment, right? This is just
Okay.
replacing, man hours with machine hours,
Right.
right? And then I think that the other category is the relatively complex tasks, which have to do with um, data synthesis, making sense, reconciling the contrarian views, right? How that works, how the dichotomy of data telling a different story, if you pull it different way, works, right?
Right.
And then I think in the higher proficiency bucket, I would also pull the softer leadership skills,
Hmm.
um, team management, people management, uh, and that change management, right? That kind of
Mhm.
stuff, more important now than any time else before. I think those are the kind of things that are going to go more and more
Hmm.
in criticality. We don't talk enough about that, but I think that's the kind of stuff that will uh, provide a competitive edge when it comes to delivering results, especially in a function like marketing.
Right.
Marketing is
Where does
about
the edge come from?
influencing.
The data side, you're saying, or from the?
Sorry, no, the softer skills and the people management and the
Yeah,
change
yeah.
management.
You don't think we've learned everything we can possibly learn about people management? You didn't learn everything you needed at your MBA?
Yeah, I feel like everything I learn something every day. Uh,
It's true.
It's it may not be earth shattering, but incremental things here and there, and it all adds up in the long term.
I agree. And even like for me on this podcast is sometimes this has been a very interesting and fascinating conversation. But sometimes I have conversations about similar topics, account based
Yeah,
marketing, and hopefully it doesn't get too crazy for people listening. But uh, yeah, I'm only absorbing so much, right? Almost like
right,
our lungs can only absorb so much oxygen at a time, whether we breathe fast or not. That's, you get what you get. I
right,
can only get so much about ABM in my head at the time, but I think it's like spaghetti against the wall. Eventually it sticks and makes it better.
exactly.
But like eventually the things bubble to the surface of, well, 13 people all said it was this. That's very interesting. That I know there's all this buzz, but this is what has come to it. So yeah, I hear you that and also the soft skills and and how to really work with people, especially because people keep evolving. And the generations, you keep hearing about different generations learn and are inspired and are driven by different things. You're going to need to continue upgrading your leadership and management skills to be able to address that.
Yeah, you're right. I think people and the generational change there, and the mix of sort of the demographic, um, it's also the just the automation and the processes,
Yeah.
and the communication and how that's evolved over time, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, the things that we are a lot of things that marketers are working right now is a pivot from what they were doing 5 months ago,
Yeah.
right? So all the more reason on managing the change and guiding the team through it, right?
Mm.
Because you'll have people who are relatively early on in the career, and then you have people who have been doing this for 30 years, and everybody in between, right? So I think that's where you are only as effective as the weakest link
Mm.
in the ecosystem, right?
Right.
So I think unless you, so I think that's where kind of leadership becomes critically important.
Do you have any, I don't know, tips, suggestions, your most important aspects, top three, whatnot, on the change management side, and what makes for successful and change management that doesn't burn everyone and
Yeah, uh, it's a very timely question, and something
yeah.
that's on top of my mind, because I've lived this rodeo a couple of times now. Um, I think if I have to kind of prioritize on and focus on a couple of things,
Right.
that would be the following. The first is explain the whys. You know, why is it important to not do what we were doing all this while, right?
Right.
And then when you do that, meet your team or your stakeholders where they are, right? Don't expect them to be where you are, and customize your language, understand their psychology, and kind of make them comfortable in explaining the reasons of the decision or your thinking, etc., right?
Mm.
Because when you do that, even if they may not agree 100%, they'll be grateful that you took the time
Mm-hmm.
to explain that to them, right? And by
Right.
just doing that, you'll get a soft commitment. So I think that I think is critical, in terms of explaining the whys. The other thing I would say is, defining what success looks like. uh, and it's not, so defining what success looks like, and then walking the talk, walking the talk, I guess, is
Mm.
the right way to say it, right? So if you tell your team, here are the three things that matter, right? And then let's say your boss's boss comes to you to work on a project that doesn't align with three things. That's a moment of truth. How are you going to live your beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
What
I
do you
think that's
do?
where you need
Yeah.
to shield your team, and no, this is what success looks like. This is what we're going to do. So there's a little bit of a leading by example
Right.
in how you manage change. I think the team looks up to their leaders on, what, let's see if he or she is doing what they think what they're asking us to do.
Right.
So those are, I think, very important pivotal moments. The third thing I would say is integrity.
Mm.
That doing the right thing, um, and it's kind of forget who said it, like, character is what you do when nobody is watching.
Yeah.
And I think especially integrity was always important, but especially now, more important than ever.
Yeah. No one might be watching. We're at home.
Exactly. You're home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've often said, like, so for my company, completely remote, and um, I've told people in interviews that we don't have time to micromanage you. It's too
Exactly.
hard. It's impossible. I can't come to your house and make sure you're doing your stuff. You just need to get things done. It's results oriented kind of thing, as opposed to, are you in your cube? I don't know if you're working, but you're in your cube. It's like, no, I don't care if you're in your cube. I just be at home, be at the beach. But let's get it done. But we can't,
Exactly.
you need that integrity. You're right. And that's one of the things you can't really replace in a company. If
Yeah.
you gotta have that. And if you violate that, they usually get rid of you at that point. Because it's
Exactly.
so important now. I probably is one, it's like for sure. If you're not showing up with integrity now, then you can't work remote.
Yeah, you're right. I think I forget. I think it was probably Ray Dalio in his principle that he publishes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you familiar with that?
It's a book, right? I read it.
It's a book, and he
Yeah.
kind of posts the snippets
That's a
every day or
hardcore
every
book.
other day.
That book is like, it's
It's
heavy.
pretty, it's solid. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think he talks about once you understand that something is a problem, don't tolerate it.
Hmm.
And integrity is a real big problem, but there are lesser and less severe versions of that. I think one of the things that in change management is also, once you know that something is a problem, just be very decisive, especially for the things that are not good.
Don't tolerate it. Gosh, that's great. It's a great point to make. He's a smart guy.
Definitely.
That book's a heavy one. Um, don't tolerate it. When you went through your list, explain the why, meet them at where they are, define what success looks like. I was laughing in my head because I could remember myself completely violating all of those things you've talked about, and how terrible it is. It goes something like, "Hey guys, we're going to do this, so do this." Why? Somebody asks. Blah 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 blah. You don't understand. I've been reading on it for years. um, you have to do this, and I'm completely unclear with what exactly I want. Great, let's do this. Go team. Let's go on a retreat. Right? It's terrible experience on the team, and you don't often get what you're asking for sure. I remember there's an example of a CEO at a company who was sharing sort of almost like brainstorming or kind of putting these
Yeah.
ideas out there. Didn't really form this ahead of time. I think it's important to form this ahead of time, not extrapolate. I like to think extrapolate,
Right.
extrapolate,
Extempore. Yeah. Something like
extemporaneous.
that. I
Yeah,
get the idea.
that word,
On the
that word.
fly.
I like to do that, but don't do that. Right? It's like, don't do that with your team. Think about it ahead
Yeah.
of time. Well, he was sort of just talking, and then the meeting ended, and then what ended up happening is 6 months later they sat him down in a presentation. They said, "Here's the app you wanted," and he was like, "What app?" Like, the app you mentioned on that meeting 6 months ago that you wanted us to build. And he was like, "I didn't want you to build an app." They had spent 6 months of 12 developers working on it full time, however much that costs to build this app that didn't really intend for. That wasn't the outcome he was looking for, but he wasn't defining the success. He didn't tell them the why, and he didn't do any of these things. And so they just went, and that was a waste. They didn't use it. They couldn't use it. And it just proves that what you're talking about is so true.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an extreme example, but that's
Yeah,
a
that's
very
true.
good example
I
of.
like the extremes though,
No, no, yeah. No, you're making a point.
Right.
But there are lesser versions of this that are happening every day.
Good
Lack
point.
of sort of that feedback loop,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
That's very critical. It plays out day in, day out.
Absolutely. Who are you? Can we switch to that? Can you, how, you're brilliant. You're a speaker, you're a marketing leader, you're leading teams. Clearly you've got a sense of change management, school, education, all these things. You take us back in time. It's like
Yeah.
little Yogesh running around. Like, where'd you grow up? What was it like? Did you always know you're going to be in marketing and working with teams and all that?
um, yeah, my journey is definitely not linear. It's been
Okay.
an interesting journey. I grew up in India.
And what part
My,
is it? The northern part, the southern part?
northern part of India, yeah,
Northern. Okay.
closer to New Delhi. And my dad had a small business. He owned a hardware store.
Oh wow.
So I grew up around machinery and engines and that kind of stuff. So I wanted to do mechanical engineering.
Right.
So that was kind of my passion at the time, and
Did
that
you
led me
tinker
to
with things and like build
uh,
and mess with stuff? No.
exactly. I
Yeah.
did it all the
Oh,
time,
you did.
and
You did. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
my parents uh, hated the sight of me at the
You're like,
on the
why is
day.
the fan not working?
Exactly.
Well, I wanted to see what was inside of it.
That's a benign version of the things I did.
Oh yeah. What's the non-benign version?
Oh,
All the food goes bad in the refrigerator.
uh, yeah, or the carburetor and a two-wheeler,
Oh no.
stuff like that.
Right.
Um, so I did mechanical engineering, and so I think that was closer to the dot-com boom when I was graduating
Okay.
from mechanical engineering undergrad, and I uh, I started to program as a part of one of the courses that
Okay.
we had. And I just loved the power of programming. Like I could make my own games. I did my tic tac
Yeah.
toe. I could rig the software. Like I thought that was so cool. You
Yeah.
put in some work, and you'll know right away what happens. And
Right.
I've always been very logical, methodical, right? So I just love that. So I did a change of the field, and the job that I looked for required me to be a programmer. So I
Mm,
switched from sort of a mechanical engineering to a computer and software engineering, right?
got it.
That's where I started my actual work career. Um,
So
so I
after
was,
school, you applied for jobs that wanted the software, the coding
yeah,
side. Okay.
exactly, yeah, coding,
Nice.
programming, that
What
kind of a thing.
languages were you learning back then?
Front end, back end, like so a lot of Java, but
Yeah.
also COBOL,
Oh, really?
if you remember,
Yeah.
and then the back end databases as well.
Wow.
Um, I love that experience. I think it really, uh, you know, you get a ton of respect for engineering
Oh,
and
for sure.
what goes on beyond the scenes. And that's when I think I was working for a client in the US. I was in India, and they
Okay.
liked what I was doing. They had me come here, supporting some of the stuff. Uh, I was supporting marketing and sales teams here,
Hmm.
and there are a couple of pivotal moments in that time frame. I thought that maybe as our marketing team could have approached a problem a little more methodically on certain things.
Imagine that.
I, I thought that maybe the customer experience should look different from what it looked back then. Um, and this must sound a little bit presumptuous, but I promise you that's not the intent. I thought I could do a better job
Well,
being a marketer.
you know, even now, I mean, organizations, if they're not looking at the whole system, they tend to look at an individual component of the lawnmower, of the radio or the fan, and they're not looking at the whole thing, and so they end up being disjointed, not functioning, right? So I could see you
Exactly.
your your engineering background and the coding, where it's very much you're making modules that work together and talk to each other, and it's so much more logical than maybe at the time a creative marketing shop who's like just designing logos and doing trade shows. It's like there's more to it than this.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then you mix it with the client experience and having the empathy that you have as a own customer, right? So you put
Yes.
those together. Oh, you know what? I can do this job and I can do it better than the other guy. So at that point, I decided to quit my job and I started my MBA. I
Got
went
it.
to University of Michigan, the best school ever. Go Blue.
And that's Tom Brady, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Brady was
Yeah.
there for for a period of time.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was very rewarding. Tough 2 years, but very rewarding. I did my full-time MBA.
Full
Um,
time.
and concentrated in strategy and marketing.
Wow.
And officially, I got the legit stamp of a marketer.
Yes.
And since then, I've been in financial services. I've been in technology. In technology, I've worked in social media with Twitter. I worked in e-commerce with GoDaddy. I was also working in the robo advisory industry for a little bit. So I've
Yeah.
bounced around. Um, and I think that's one of the things that has really helped me is that multidisciplinary experience as a marketer.
Hmm.
Is just, you don't realize when you're doing it at the time, but I'm so thankful that it happened, because that makes it so much easy for me to connect the dots and port in the best practices from one industry to the other, right?
Okay.
Like I think
So yeah, what is it to you though? Multidisciplinary, is that multi-industry, multi-job within marketing, or
all the above, I
all the
think,
above? Yeah.
in some ways. So multidisciplinary, you could say that I was an engineer, so it helps me in marketing. But
Right.
it's also an aspect of that is also multi-industry experience, which is,
Right.
hey, I was in technology, right? I know exactly how the market or deployment works.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's bring it over in financial services here,
Right.
right? Things like those. I think it makes the pattern recognition much easier.
Interesting. Because you have
Um,
completely different subsets of data. And so when you see a pattern that reminds you of another pattern, you're like, okay, this is now not just even a pattern within this industry. This is it seems like something that's across the board here, almost like a
exactly.
principle that I need to
You
follow.
got it. You,
Yeah.
you got it. Like, give me a simple example. And I still remember, I'm not going to name the employers, but we did, A/B experimentation, right? A/B
Okay. I'm looking at the
experimentation.
list of them, but I'll just imagine which one it is.
Um, did an A/B experimentation of
Okay.
the landing page was not converting very well. And when you think about the drivers of customer action, it
Mm-hmm.
is urgency, it is
Mm.
social evidence, right? One of
Yes.
them is social evidence. Hey, 10 people bought this product in the last 1 hour,
Right. Or signed up
right?
for Twitter, whatever.
There you go, right? Right. And like, uh, that stuff is applicable. Human
Mm.
behavior is human behavior,
Yes.
and how they interact with people, their browsing behavior, what really ticks them, what motivates them, their aspirations, they're not changing when they're going from one website to the other, right? So I took what worked in the A/B experimentation in terms of driving urgency, and then applied it to other places in financial services, and the result was a runaway success, right? Other things as well. But that kind of are some of those examples when you have applied them and have had success with them in other places. It's, you just know that the best practices a lot of times come from an industry outside of the industry you are in right now.
Right. Right. That testing, I think it's undervalued. I myself, I had a chance to be for a short period of time in an internal agency, did marketing for several companies within a big company, and you're able to see across several companies at the same time what works, what doesn't, where to spend money, who's spending money, what are they doing, what are they expect. You have the volume and you have the data to be able to see things, and you're right. You don't forget that when you go to somewhere else. You retain that. So to your point, having the results from multiple experiments across your career, that adds up. That adds up.
Exactly.
You just know things after that.
Yeah. And if you kind of think about it, I mean, the disciplines are so interrelated, right? And the industries are getting so interrelated with
For sure.
technology empowering a lot of the business model.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it like? The number one, I've seen this little infographic. The number one taxi service owns no cars. The number one rental apartment service owns no apartments. It's
Right.
industries are merging and flipping and changing. You have to stay with that.
Yeah. And no knowledge ever goes waste. That's the other
Yeah.
thing that you don't realize it. You think this is, you question sometimes, this is grunt work. How is it going to help me? It always helps.
Yeah.
It
You never
always
know.
helps.
Yeah, those stories. And you know what? Those stories, eventually when you go to write a book, you need stories. So the more stories,
Exactly.
the better, you know?
Exactly. Like when I was at Twitter, like I I was just learning, enjoying about
Yeah.
social
What was that
media.
like?
How
Was that cool or was it just another company?
Twitter is terrific.
Yeah.
It's a terrific product. It was a bit of a, coming from a laid back, relatively conservative,
Financial company, kind of
Chicago.
steady.
So
Yeah.
it was a, coming to the Bay Area was a pivotal moment for me in general. There were, shocks on multiple levels, but
Yeah.
the organization is pretty cool. Great product. One of the going back to the earlier point is, you really don't know how where this experience will take you and be of benefit to you in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And when I grew into the senior roles in marketing, I have a very strong understanding of what social media marketing can and cannot do.
All
Right?
right.
Social media marketing is, especially when you think about the growth marketing or the performance marketing, it's pretty big
Yeah.
for a lot of small and medium businesses, as you already know. Um, and even I would say for client engagement marketing too, but
Mhm.
especially from the growth marketing, right? That experience served me really, really well over the
Sure.
years,
I can
right?
imagine.
But I didn't think about that, just as I wasn't thinking about how engineering is going to help me down the road,
Right.
right? Just like I didn't think too much about how e-commerce experience will help me down the road, right?
Right.
All these disciplines come together,
Right.
and the more the kind of the more experience and the more senior you get, the more you start to appreciate. Oh, you know what? This all makes sense. Well, was it Steve Jobs who said in his famous commencement speech, like hindsight, the dots always connect looking back.
Mm. Probably.
I think it is a very famous commencement speech, and I think it's pretty spot on.
Yeah. It always makes sense how you got there looking back. That's interesting.
Exactly.
Dots. Dots quote. I just was throwing it in Google to see if it you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that
There
the
you go.
dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Steve Jobs.
Exactly.
Good call, man. Yeah, like this kind of ties into a lot of things we are saying. The dots aren't necessarily going to be data.
Exactly. Well
Especially,
put. I may
yeah,
steal
especially
that.
going forward.
Dots are not data.
Dots are not data. Yeah. Yeah. So so now, I mean, what are you doing now? Now you're back in finance. You're back in the banking world and
Yeah. Yeah.
kicking ass, taking
Yeah.
names.
I'm, one of the, couple of things that are important to me is, am I making a difference day in, day out?
Yeah,
Am I moving the needle?
right.
And in doing so, am I helping the people around me?
Mm-hmm.
Am I making a meaningful difference at a personal, professional level, right?
Right.
Um, and then the other thing that's important to me is, am I working for the right person? Am I working with the people who are going to challenge me,
That's a
right?
good
And
point.
I've been fortunate that all those boxes check out. Um, so yeah, it's fun. It's good to be back in financial services,
Right?
and I think I'm a even more powerful marketer now than I ever was, because of all my experience in between.
Right. Man. All those, yeah. Yeah, you're back. And then you brought I mean, you were at Twitter. So you want to talk about social, you were there.
Exactly.
All these things and you can, yeah, I always looked at it like you in that old game Trivial Pursuit.
No,
You ever saw that?
no.
You should Google it. I
Okay.
know they've done some new ones, but the way you win is you go around the circular board and you land on a certain color, and that color has a category. So just even image search, it would be interesting. Every color has a category. So like green might be geography, and blue might be politics and government or something, and red might be sciences. And so you land on a color, and then somebody asks you a question, trivia about in that topic. And if you get, say, the science question correct, then you get a little red pie square, little wedge, little pie wedge, almost like a piece of apple pie slice in your little circle, you know? And then you go around, you try to get the geography one, and then you land somewhere else. I don't need another, this. I need the other color. And you try to collect all the colors as the
Yeah.
goal. I've always felt kind of like you, that these different experiences were like those little pie wedges in Trivial Pursuit that added up to the whole, which is this sort of multidisciplinary, multi-dimensional approach to marketing, rather than just a straightforward piece of, a single block. It's circular mixed with different colors in it.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. And
Yeah.
actually, I may buy this. This. I think this is
They've
gonna
got
be
a kid
fun.
version. It's fun. They've got an adult version, kid version. Then there's the old version where you're like really class. You see it in like old restaurants. The classic Trivial Pursuit one. And
Yeah. I'm gonna buy probably the kids version. I have two boys.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
And I think
Nice.
this will be good to keep them busy.
Yeah, especially during these times, right?
Exactly.
My kids found a version of that's like Disney questions. It's like, are you
Ooh.
smarter than your kids with answering Disney questions? And they have, the questions for parents are harder. They're like really obscure. The questions for kids are like easy. What was the name of the lion in Lion King? Oh, yeah. For the parents, what was the name of the thing? You're like, I have no idea. So it's like the kid wins on that game. It's pretty. They always want to play it. Imagine that.
That's
Crazy.
Yeah, that's by design. It's pretty smart. Hey, they're customers. That's not you and me. It's the kids.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
So
Yeah.
they got that one right.
They really did. Hey, I have a hypothetical question for you.
Sure.
Let's say I may have a time machine here in New Hampshire, and you get to borrow it. COVID's done. We'll wipe the machine down. You get to go in a time machine and go back in time and talk to yourself. And it's yourself just after you graduated your undergrad. Way back when, right? Like you're probably still in India. You just got that mechanical degree. You're looking to get into coding. What kind of advice would you give yourself, knowing all the different journey you've been on and all the things you've done and not done? What kind of things would you tell yourself?
Ooh. So many things.
Yeah.
Two things in particular.
Okay.
One is what we just talked about. Dots are not data, right?
Yeah.
Everything will be valuable because at the time, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you do at an entry level is grunt work, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of are, bored. Really have to do this. I'm more.
Mm-hmm.
You have an what is it called? Over perceived opinion, an over.
What is it? Like it's
overly flattering opinion of yourself.
Oh yeah, sure.
Self-perception, right? Especially when you are that young, and you think this some of the work is beneath you. I think that's bad thinking. That's silly, right? I didn't fall too much into that, but I did see. There were times when I thought that,
for sure,
what this is.
It's a foundation. You need. I did a report that took 8 hours in Excel.
Exactly.
You need to do that. Of course, I built macros later to make sure I didn't have to do that, but you need to experience those things. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Do the hours, do the work, right?
Do the
That's
work.
one.
Yeah.
The second is, don't worry too much about the title. Focus on the learning. Focus on working with the right people. Focus on seeking the right mentors, the right managers, and promotions, titles will happen. I think it's not a good idea to, chase a title and take a promotion because you get a higher title. And even worse idea is taking a position for money because you get paid more.
Never seems to work out, does it?
It doesn't, right?
No. Because it puts blinders on. It's like your tunnel vision from earlier. It's a data point that is going to lead you astray. It's like you may make another 30 grand or however much, but are you going to hate every single day?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's hard to see the other part. Like you see the 30 grand, you cannot wrap your head around, hating every day or working with a bad boss or working in a toxic
Yes.
culture, right? You don't, you cannot picture that
Right.
because you're too young.
Right.
Those are the things I would tell myself. And it's not like that I did a lot of them, but there were times when I made certain decisions
Mm.
um, that aligned with going in places that didn't position me for success 100%, right?
Right.
That didn't build on my strengths, etc. And yeah, those are good teachers.
Powerful lessons, man. Powerful lessons.
Exactly.
Would you listen to yourself if you showed up?
Back then,
Yeah.
I doubt it.
I know, right? Me neither. I don't know. Like, that's what I look like?
What was yours? What would, if I
What
ask the
would
same
mine
question
be?
of you?
Um, I think it would be something around and to your point, I would have to talk my language back then, right? But the concept would be something around staying within the intersection of your passions and your purpose, things you're good at and things you enjoy. Stay there and be less concerned with um, what is supposed to happen. Like I
Yeah.
was supposed to be a fighter pilot or in the Air Force. I would be a terrible pilot, right? Because I'm like, fly to New Jersey again? Let's fly to Hawaii. This is your captain. We're going to Hawaii today because I want to, right? I would be terrible
It's
at that.
awesome.
Hey, what can we do differently on this landing that we didn't do last time, right? Do not let me,
Funny.
like, the most I can do is skydiving, but like, do not let me fly a plane. I tell my friends, like, if I get older, I'm like, I'm going to fly a Cessna, don't let me do it because it's not a good idea. But I was so like, like the script for me in my life was my parents were in the military or my dad was. And so it was like, I'm going to now go fly a plane. And I didn't know what that meant. That meant 100% complete and utter focus on one passion. I have many on one passion, which is flying. And that's what pilots do. Right. And that's not me, but I never had that conversation with myself to say, do you really want to do this, or is this just to look good or to fulfill some need or something? So I would try to tell myself, like, it's okay, don't worry about this or that in school. And I think the second thing I would say is I don't know if it would be drop out of school, but it would be like some point you're going to have a challenge whether to do um, some of these passions or school. Do the passion. I think I would tell myself that
Yeah.
because there was times in school where I was dying doing linear algebra. I looked at my notes recently. It looks like matrix code. I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I survived it. Linear algebra, abstract algebra. Ugh. See, you were mechanical engineering. Like me in computer science, like I love coding, but the
Yeah.
math they
Yeah.
gave me was just
Yeah.
crazy. But meanwhile, I was doing theater, and I ran the theater company at school, and I was being an entrepreneur, and I was
Yeah.
getting people to come to the shows and doing marketing and changing the website, and like though that was my early sandbox for building a company later and working with a team of people who I couldn't control because we're all just students, and that was my lab. And I guess I had that opportunity because I was in school, but it was like there's so much stress and anxiety around the coursework and these classes that I hated that it's just like do more of that, double down on that thing that you have passion with. I mean, that's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's great perspective. I think
Yeah.
it lines up with what we are hearing on the education system right now.
Yeah.
I think there is definitely a lot there.
Yeah. It's tough when I do some coaching and mentoring lately of marketing grads. They just graduated school, or worse, if they're in marketing, if they're in school right now. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you can get a job in Salesforce without a degree. You can get a job over here. Like, I don't know if you should stay in. I'm not the spokesperson for staying in school. That's for sure. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think something's got to change.
Yeah.
There is a lot that's taught that may not be of as much value right now as it was back then.
Right.
And yeah, there are a lot of things. You hear some of the experts talk about how you can replace a curriculum with some of the more practical skills that
Mm.
are more relevant to your point. in today's work industry. So
There's a powerful tweet. I think it might be Naval. I don't know if you follow him
mm-mm.
on Twitter. He's definitely one to check out. He has these little pithy little single line tweets where he boils down core principles of existence into a single tweet. Naval.
Okay. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I think
It's a
I've heard of
podcast too.
him in
Yeah.
the Tim Ferriss
Yes, yes,
book.
for sure.
Yeah,
His podcast, he has these little like 5-minute snippets where someone asks him a question, and he like answers it. But one of the things he said, I think on Twitter, was colleges are an interesting place right now. They have to convince everyone it's just as valuable to go online, keep paying your tuition, but then in a semester or two, tell you, no, 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 just kidding. It's actually way more important to go in person, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
they have to, and I don't know how you do that. I don't. Those are two truths that are against each other. So it's like,
I agree. You know, this COVID is actually going to be interesting because a
yeah,
lot of them are going remote, right?
yeah,
And I don't think they're lowering their fee.
they're
So
not
it's right. So it'll be interesting to see how. So they used to sell it as, hey, in-person experience is not replicable.
right.
Well,
I,
sounds like
yeah,
if that's the case, then shouldn't I get a discount on that $150,000 that you'll pay for a 2-year MBA?
you should. You should. There's a hilarious infographic showing Netflix, $12, Apple, Disney Plus, 15, this and this, Hulu, Harvard University, MBA online, 150K. It's like they're all just sort of SaaS delivery services now, but this price does not seem like all the others.
That's funny. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how this thing evolves.
Yeah, yeah, it really will be. It'll be interesting. Well, hey man, this has been fun. I don't know if you looked at the clock. Time just flies by when you're having good conversation.
I agree. This was fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah. Where can people connect with you if they want to reach out? Is LinkedIn good? What are some URLs and some places they can reach out?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is great for now.
Okay,
I'm also on Twitter if anybody wants to connect. But LinkedIn is I think the best. I'm very responsive there.
perfect.
Um, w- I started building a website, and some time ago I must have 50 unpublished articles. So
Really?
I'm gonna get there one day. And when I do that, I'll send you the domain name, but I'll hold on to it until then.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe even a little book. Maybe a book out of it. I don't know. Would you keep it
Ah.
digital purely or?
I don't know, man. I've never even thought of that. It's a connect that maybe I'll it's a dot that I may connect in a few years from now. But right now, that thought doesn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
I write it because I think it gives me a little more clarity. But I
Yes,
haven't really thought about, you know, what can I do with it.
that's true.
Yeah, maybe I should ask you.
Yeah, well, for sure. Get the clarity first. I've got a little red notebook. It's amazing when you put clarity in there. It slows time down just a little bit so that you can think about what happens next. Otherwise, a month goes by and you're like, "What just happened? I don't even know." But yeah, the
Exactly.
clarity comes first. But then I think once you have some clarity around certain topics, it may be interesting to share those with other people. But
Yeah.
the blog idea is fantastic. There's a book. I believe it's I think The Martian was this way too. That sci-fi book, The Martian.
Uh,
Anywhere? Did you ever see
yeah.
that? They turned it into a movie.
I saw the movie. I haven't read the book.
The book is really good. He wrote those as blog posts, the entire book, and it's
That's
online somewhere.
fascinating.
He made it into a PDF, so you can just get it for free. But like, support the guy, right? But it's a
Yeah.
fantastic experiment. He actually wrote the whole thing. It was published. It was live, just on a blog, and a publisher wrote to him and was like, "You should probably maybe we should make this a book, man. This is really good." And so now it became a book and a movie and all that. But he started just by, to your point, just start, put it on, put it on a blog, put it on a domain.
I I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that insight.
Yeah. Yeah. Happy to, man. Well, for those people listening, if you learned something, and I know you did because I did, and I have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, share this with someone else. LinkedIn's a great place for that. Share it with 100 people, 42, 3, 904, however many connections you have. whatever, but put it out there. It's thought leadership. And don't just share it, but also write some takeaways. We talked about a lot of really good things. The change management was fantastic. Those things that you can use in a team, on a team, even as an individual contributor. That's how you don't freak out your boss, is you manage change with your leadership. There's so many really good things here. Confirmation bias, not worshiping data like it's going to solve all your problems, but utilizing it, having a goal in mind first. So many takeaways. Put those on LinkedIn, tag myself, tag Yogesh, and we'll happily comment and share that as well. So that is the way to do it. Dude, fun times, man. I got to have you come back on here a little bit later on just to catch up again.
Love to do that. Thank you. This was fun. I appreciate your time, Casey. I learned a lot about you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are
And
my favorite
this is
conversations. The conversation between two people,
yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Awesome.
And for those listening, this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.